Chair, we're good to go.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you very much and welcome to everyone that's involved in the Cabinet meeting today, particularly Cabinet members, officers, and I understand we also have some special guests with us today for a special item. And especially welcome to Greg Fell, our Director of Public Health, because COVID-19 and the pandemic is at the forefront of every person's mind at the moment. So we certainly look forward to that update. Everyone else, thank you for logging on to this video conference and welcome to the meeting. I'm just going to ask Craig Rogerson, our Democratic Services Officer, to announce the housekeeping arrangements, and then we'll go into the main agenda. Over to you, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Craig Rogerson, the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I'm assisted by Paul Robinson, who is host for the meeting. The meeting is a public meeting held in accordance with the new regulations which permit meetings to be held by remote means. The meeting will be live streamed to the public via the Public Eye platform, and Sheffield Live TV are also broadcasting the meeting. There will be a recording of the meeting that will be available for people to watch later, and you can access this through the Council's website. Public questions can be asked and petitions can be presented at Cabinet meetings, and details of how to do this are on the Council's web pages and contained in the agenda papers. For this meeting, no questions were received by the submission deadline. Since the submission deadline, one question has been received this morning. We will deal with that with a written answer, which will be provided after the meeting. Before I hand back to the Chair, just a couple of procedural issues. To make the meeting run as smooth as possible, can I ask that all participants leave your microphones on mute when you're not speaking. When you want to speak, please physically raise your hand to the camera so that the Chair can see it, and only unmute when the Chair indicates that you can speak. If a member loses the ability to hear or be heard during the meeting, please alert the Chair or the host as soon as you can. And finally, a point for the watching public: you may see members looking away from their screens at times. This is because they need to look at an additional screen or device containing their agenda papers. I'll now hand back to the Chair of the meeting to proceed with introductions.
Right, thank you very much, Craig. Right, I'm going to ask each Cabinet member to introduce themselves, and then each officer that is here to make any presentations to do that at that point. So on my screen, I have Councillor Mark Jones. So Mark, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Julie. I'm Councillor Mark Jones. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment, Street Scene and Climate Change.
Thank you. Mary?
Hello, I'm Councillor Mary Lee and I'm Cabinet Member for Culture, Parks and Leisure.
Thank you. Mazza?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mazza Iqbal, Cabinet Member for Business.
Thank you. Terry?
Thanks, Julie. Councillor Terry Fox, Deputy Leader, also Cabinet Member for Finance, Resources and Governance.
Thank you. George?
Thank you. I'm Councillor George Lindars-Hammond. I'm Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care.
Thank you. Jackie?
Oh, afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Jackie Drayton, the Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Families.
Thank you. Bob?
Thanks, Chair. I'm Councillor Bob Johnson, Cabinet Member for Transport and Development.
Thank you. Paul?
I am Councillor Paul Wood. I'm a Cabinet Member for Communities and Neighbourhoods.
Thank you. Abtisam?
Thank you. I'm Councillor Abtisam Mohammed, Cabinet Member for Education and Skills.
Right. Thank you very much for Cabinet members introducing themselves. I'm just going to make a couple of changes to the agenda because my apologies for having to leave early today. I have other urgent matters, as I am sure everyone will understand what they are. So I do have to leave a little bit earlier today. So I'm proposing to the Cabinet that we bring item 15 up the agenda to take after item 7. So that will be sort of the first main agenda item after the routine items. And then we'll take item 8 because of course that sets the scene and everyone needs to understand where we are in Sheffield with COVID-19. So we have Greg, our Director of Public Health, to do that. And then item 9, which is the Sheffield COVID Business Recovery Plan. So first of all, can I get agreement that we propose to do that?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank
Agreed.
you. I did particularly want to be here for item 15, but also especially for item 8 and 9. And then I will hand over to the Deputy Leader, Councillor Terry Fox. Also, just to announce that item 9, we do have, as I say, guest with us today. We have our officer, Diana Buckley, who will be introducing the report. And we have Alexis Karachi, Mel Kanarek and Martin McCurvey from the Business Response Group. And they will come into the meeting room when we get to that particular item. So thank you very much for taking your time to join us today. The reason for this is the production of the plan has been jointly spearheaded by the members of this Business Response Group and reflects a partnership between the public and private sector, where everyone is actively working together to help our business community respond to and recover from the pandemic. And particular thank you to Councillor Mazur Iqbal, who requested that they be invited today and bring this item. And actually, at the time of it couldn't be more perfect, could it? Following the recent announcements and how that might certainly impact on our businesses. So welcome to you. So item 2, apologies for absence. Craig, I don't see any.
None, Chair.
Thank you. And I don't see any items where we are required to exclude the public and the press, am I right?
None, Chair.
Thank you. And can I ask if anyone wishes to declare an interest, and if so, which item on the agenda, and if it's pecuniary or personal? Any declarations of interest? None, that's good. And item 5 minutes of the previous meeting, could we ask members to approve those minutes as a correct record?
Agreed, Chair.
Okay,
Agreed,
thank
Chair.
you.
Agreed.
Item 6 is public questions and petitions, and as we've heard at the start, there are no public questions or petitions. So we'll move on to item 7. Items called in for scrutiny. Don't believe there are any.
None, Chair.
Thank you. So now it's to bring up the agenda as we agreed, item 15. So this is the report of the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, complaint about removal of street trees and streets ahead contract. Before I bring in Gillian, who I presume is just going to introduce the report, I just would like to make a statement on behalf of the executive and on behalf of the cabinet and on behalf of the council. The report requests that we accept the findings of the report and provide an unreserved apology for the failings of the implementation of the Streets Ahead policy, by which it refers to the handling of the tree replacement work. I do offer that unreserved apology for the council's failings in the implementation of the street trees elements of the Streets Ahead programme. This is set out in the report and the apology that we issued last week. In addition, I think it is important to say I also accept the controversy and concern that the issue has caused and that the dispute shouldn't have been allowed to get to the point it did. And we accept the view in the report that the council's poor practice in managing the issue did contribute to the opposition to the programme, particularly with incidents such as Rustlings Road. It shouldn't have been handled in the way that it was, and there are other examples of this also in the report. It is also clear that the approach we have now got to, which I think the vast majority of people are supportive of, is the right way forward. It is again important to say that over the past 2.5 years, where we have changed the report, we have at different stages apologised. And as said in the report, this is not the first time we have accepted that we got some things wrong with the way that it was handled. Most notably upon the production of the lessons learned document last year, which is also referenced in the report. With regards specifically to the Rustlings Road incident, the council did give a full apology for those events at that time, which is also referenced in the report. We wrote to the residents of Rustlings Road a week after that incident took place, and I reiterate again that apology today. But finally, I think on a more positive note, it is important to say that the fact that we are now working towards a street tree strategy that has been co-produced with the groups who were previously at the centre of the dispute is a demonstration of how far we have come together, and I thank all those involved for that. And as recognised in the report, we are in a very different position today to where we were 2.5 years ago. And thank you to everyone involved. And I wish everyone all the very best in taking that forward. Absolutely, fully support it, and thank everyone involved in making this happen. Thank you. So can I ask Gillian to just introduce the report? Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you, Chair. So today I've brought a report to Cabinet which gives an overview of the findings of the Ombudsman report and the failings of the council within that. So we've given an overview of those within the report. The Ombudsman has also made a number of recommendations to the council, and so within my report I've given a précis of how we're taking those recommendations forward. As the Chair has already explained, we've made a lot of progress in addressing the concerns about transparency, about how we make our decisions regarding street tree removals that are documented in the Ombudsman's report, with the new street tree strategy and the new partnership we have with the Wildlife Trust and other partners who are part of that board for us. So the report covers those recommendations about dealing with embedding transparency. So we've set out how we will make decisions about removing street trees going forward, how we will engage in public consultation as part of that process, and how we will publish the results of that. These were all failings previously identified with the work we did. We've also engaged in addressing the process that we manage with Amy, so there is better transparency and clarity on their recommendations to the council to remove street trees and the full process they have gone through in assessing a tree before it is recommended to the council for a removal. We've also done a lot about making the Amy contract much more open and transparent. The vast majority of it is available publicly. There are some elements that are redacted because of commercial sensitivities, but that is a very, very small amount of the contract. We have invested in improving the awareness of the complaints process for both council staff and Amy, our contractors, so that when both council staff and the contractors are dealing with complaints, they know how to respond in line with the council process and how that can escalate, and the role of the Ombudsman in the investigation. The council is also committed to wider transparency on our contracts and decision making, which is also detailed in the report. The report also makes a recommendation to Cabinet to approve a public archive to be developed in relation to the issues around the controversies of our previous management of the street trees. So what that would do is make a publicly available digital archive for anybody to access information about the legal proceedings and the dealings of the contractor and the council during that period. So that would all be publicly available. We've previously had experience of doing that for the Hillsborough inquiry and also the Orgreave miners' strike. So it's something that we have had some previous experience with in being further transparent and open. So that's the overview, Chair. If there's any other details you'd like me to reiterate from the report.
Right, thank you, Gillian. Are there any questions or comments? Right, I have Mark, Councillor Mark Jones. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the officers who've worked really hard over the last period of well, actually years. In all fairness, it's not something that we've been undertaking recently. It's been an ongoing process that's taken a lot of time, and a lot of effort has gone into this to try and make sure that we learn the lessons of what we've done before and try and be better going forward. There's a lot of efforts to go. I accept that we've got stuff wrong. I made apologies last week for this publicly, and I'm happy to talk with anybody who needs to discuss any elements of what we're proposing here today. I know that the proposals are an attempt at moving forward. This isn't the end of the road. I have no doubt that we've got a long distance to go yet, and I'm sure that we will improve the situation as we go forward and learn, and together with the support of the public, I'm hoping that we can be the open and transparent council that people want. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, I would just like to add a thank you to all the officers that particularly have been involved in getting us to the very, I would say, positive position where we are today. But I'd also want to thank those involved when we paused the contract 2.5 years ago. It seems quite a long time ago, when I was initially involved in those discussions, and remember being sat in the rooms around with an independent chair and the Bishop of Sheffield, and entered into those talks. And I want to thank all those that were involved during that period of time. I probably won't go so far as to say it was a complete pleasure, but it was certainly a pleasure agreeing the shared goals that we all wish to achieve, and getting to the point where we are today. And I know how difficult it has been for them, and I know it continues to do so, because they are continue to work actively at, as I say, developing and implementing the new strategy. You know you are, so each individual certainly that was sat around that table, and I've continued to go on and work with all the cabinet members and the officers in getting us to this position today. On behalf of myself personally, thank you very much. So thank you, Julian. It doesn't appear we've got any more questions or comments. So can we agree the recommendations in the report?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Thank you very much. So now, thank you, Gillian. Now we move on to item 8, which is COVID-19 update. Greg.
I'll take myself off mute. Thanks, Chair. I'll share screen. There's probably about 6 or 7 slides, a minimum of pretty pictures, a few words, and I'll make the slides available just as soon as I finish presenting them. So no need to take notes. So if I screen share and take it from there, that one. Okay. Someone nod that you can see the slides. Yeah, thank you. So up to date as of today. It will be up to date today. It won't be up to date tomorrow or the day after, but it's up to date as of today. Usual caveats. So key points: epidemiology, R0, the measure of spread of the average number of people that will be infected by one index case is somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 everywhere in the country. We don't calculate it at city level, but in Yorkshire, it's the Yorkshire number. It's in that space. So of 100 index cases, there will be between 130 and 150 additional cases that follow. The higher the number, the more the spread, and that is a concern. R0 being above 1 and a very, very low number of cases is actually not a huge concern. We were there in the summer. Our number was just slightly above 1. The number of cases were low. That is not now the case. What we've seen, I think I've said this previously, there's a regionalised takeoff. The north has taken off considerably faster than the south. There are a number of reasons for that. We may dwell on some of those if you want to ask questions. It's fair to say the south is catching up, actually. Certainly London is becoming a lot hotter, but the north has taken off considerably faster than the south. South Yorkshire is perhaps the least hot part of the north, but equally it's quite hot, as you all know, and that's all over the press. 10 days ago, the number in Sheffield, the 7-day incident rate in Sheffield was 470 per 100,000. It's now falling. It now hovers at about 400 per 100,000. And the next bullet point's an interesting one. We focused a lot of energy and attention on the 18 to 25-year-olds. The age cohort in which incidence was highest is 18 to 25-year-olds, and we've welcomed tens of thousands of that cohort back to Sheffield. They're called students. The result was inevitable and has been seen in all northern university towns, in fact, all university towns. However, the reason I say it's a distraction is that group are largely quite well. The age-specific incidence is rising in all other age groups, and the average age is now rising again. So the average age of a case, a person with symptoms and positive test, a month ago was about 30. As of yesterday, it's about 36. So that's beginning to rise again. Test positivity is beginning to rise. Of 100 people with symptoms who get a test, 24 of them will test positive. And again, 6 weeks ago, that was 2%. So yeah, all of the signs are sadly going in the wrong direction. Test result timeliness, which sadly isn't in our local control, and contact tracing timeliness and completeness, and the ability to get to some of the communities that bluntly we find hard to get to, remains a significant concern to me. Hospitals are becoming busier. So high level, those are the key points. I promised you a few pretty pictures, and these are those. So this is the number of cases per day, every day since February. And you can see, the lockdown was released here, the mid-July. Numbers fluctuated and have gone up steeply. They've gone up particularly steeply since schools and universities have gone back. That was predicted by the epidemiologists. Nationally, that has come to pass. It's come to pass everywhere. It's definitely come to pass in Sheffield. You can see the picture as well as me. So on average, over the last 7 days, about 290 cases are diagnosed per day. So non-trivial number, but you can see the trend over the past week or so for yourself. So probably the past 2 weeks actually for yourself, the trend is definitively downwards. Good news in part. This is what it looks like for South Yorkshire. Trends are all upwards, apart from Sheffield. The reason why the trend for Sheffield is downwards is because the trend of new infections in 18 to 24-year-olds is definitively downwards, and the demographics in Sheffield are skewed massively by the student population. So that's causing the overall rate in Sheffield to come down. So in part good news, but there are always caveats. The caveat is this: it's easy but wrong to blame all of this on students. Very wrong to blame all of this on students. We opened universities. We're enabling young people to have further education. If you take the population as a whole, the black line, this is the 7-day incident rate, now going down, as you can see. If you take students out of that, the hatched line, the numbers are still going up and are way above what is the red line, which in the old regime was an area of intervention. So numbers were too high anyway, and going up in across South Yorkshire and most of Northern England. So it's easy but wrong to pin this one on students. Numbers were going up, and actually students have masked what has been going on underlying that, underneath the epidemiology. Last pretty graph. The age-specific rate is going up in all age cohorts. Sorry, my circle's a bit in the wrong place. The red bit of the heat map is the student population, which is beginning to cool down. It's turning from red to amber. It's the top line that concerns me most. It's the age-specific rate in the 65 plus age cohort. That's the group that are most likely to be very severely ill, and that's the group that's most concerning. So the upshot of all of that is stabilizing of numbers overall. But if you take the 18 to 24-year-olds out of the Sheffield epidemiology, we're in a pretty similar position to the rest of South Yorkshire, and the worrying bit is the rise in the age 65 pluses. We know ONS and others have done the work on this. We know the uptick was driven by a surge in cases in people under 35, cutting to the chase, more contact with more people, and household mixing. Household mixing remains where the business end of this is. There's no doubts there. We know that cases will start in the young but get to the old. So it'd be wrong to treat age cohorts as mutually exclusive groups that never mix with each other. You know, this just doesn't happen. So we know that there will be transmission kind of up the age cohorts, and that is happening globally, nationally, and in Sheffield. We've put a lot of focus on the 7-day rate, but I think it's important to put that into a wider picture. So the other important metrics are test positivity, which is now 24%, the age-specific incident hospitalisation, and we're not yet seeing any uptick in death, but we may. I'll be surprised if we don't, sadly. Hospitals are becoming steadily busier. There is small print to that, and it's worth dwelling on the small print. The testing regime in hospitals is very different now to what it was in March and April. Hospitals are keeping elective care going, whereas earlier on in March and April, there was a huge curtailing of elective care. We're currently keeping elective care going in hospitals. And you know, curtailing elective care comes with consequences. That was perfectly apparent in all of the earlier data. There have been huge improvements in treatment outcome, both in terms of the drugs that are used. Dexamethasone is now commonly used in people with severe COVID disease, and it's significantly reduced mortality by 30% offhand. And intensive care clinical practice, the practice of rolling people onto their fronts, has made a huge difference to treatment outcomes. So there's good news there. The bad news is there is an ongoing rise in ventilated beds, and there's an ongoing rise across all of the relevant metrics in hospitals. The frontline view that I hear from hospital clinicians is that they are very, very, very busy, and that's only going one way. It's important that we don't under or overplay the hospital narrative, and I'm being really careful on that one. We're on an epidemic curve, and what we do to change the shape of the epidemic curve will affect what happens in hospitals, and that has consequences for all of us. But time and time again, I come back to the basics. Now I'll talk about the basics again. Sorry, you've all heard me talk about that before. Julie may say a word or two in a minute about the additional restrictions that will be in place from Sheffield from 1 minute past 12 on Saturday. My view is that further restrictions are necessary to control spread. There's no doubts there. Defined as an epidemiologist, there's no doubts in my mind. People talk about things like herd immunity, letting the virus rip, a pejorative term I accept, through younger, weller people to protect the vulnerable, and the trade-off between the economy versus health. The best way to protect both vulnerable individuals and the economy is to keep the community spread low. And there's a whole evidence base to support that statement. So that's why we're focused on keeping community spread as low as humanly possible. However, there are restrictions, and the purpose of restrictions is to limit social contact. It's a suppression strategy, and it doesn't change the fundamentals. So that takes me back again to the basics, and the basics are testing, contact tracing and isolation, speed, depth and completeness really matter. The management of incidents, and my team put a huge amount of energy in managing incidents in all sorts of places, contexts and settings. The choices that 560,000 people make, we've throughout managed this by consensus and consent. That's still the right thing to do. Of course, we have to support people to do the right thing and to enable that. The messages for individuals are sadly unchanged. People want me to come up with nice new messages, but they remain the same. If you have symptoms, get a test, stay at home. If you have symptoms or test positive, or if asked to isolate, limit social contacts, number and nature and distance, hand washing and face covering. I'll end with a spin on a quote by the ex-director of Centre for Disease Control in America, who basically said the choices made by, in his case, 250 million, but for me, 560,000 individuals matter, largely on private property, and lives depend on it. We are in the position that none of us wanted to be in, but we are where we are. We are in a position where further restrictions will be enforced from Saturday. None of that changes the importance of the basics, and the basics remain those things there. So I shall stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Greg. Can I ask Cabinet members if they have any questions or any comments? I do have a statement that I do want to make. But the first thing I do want to say is, on the final slide, everyone completely understands that it is incumbent on every single individual to make the right choices. However, for some people, those choices are extremely difficult to make. They know that they shouldn't be travelling. They know, ideally, that they should be working from home where they can. They know, ideally, that they shouldn't be having to go out and do even essential shopping, etc. And they want to limit that social interaction. But for some people, it is extremely difficult for them to do that because they have to go out to work. They have to get on public transport. Their lives and livelihoods depend on that. And I think for us in Sheffield, we have to help those people make the right choices, every single one of them, recognising that it's not as easy for some people as it is for others. And especially on the next item, when we're talking about businesses, we'll find businesses in a similar predicament. It is somewhat easier for some businesses than others, and the impact on businesses and citizens of Sheffield is quite varied. I just want to explain where we are, because I think it's critical that we make this statement certainly in this forum, but also to the people of Sheffield because of the recent announcement this morning. I have to say that I didn't hear about this recent announcement was going to be made this morning at 9 o'clock until very late last night. Last week, the government clearly set out to the nation their new approach to managing the pandemic and growth in the virus across the country through the local or regional tiered lockdown system. We have been in tier 2 just for a week. It's exactly a week today. However, the government informed us that due to the continued high level of cases across the region and increasingly concerning levels of hospital admission, it is now necessary to raise the alert level to very high and place the region in tier 3. And I think that's supported by our Director of Public Health. So just to say, we accept that it was inevitable that certain extra restrictions needed to be considered. So we agree that more needs to be done to tackle the growth of the virus. We are seeing cases rise across the country. In Sheffield and South Yorkshire, we have seen there is a growing and extremely concerning number of people in ICU beds, and doing nothing was clearly not an option. As these restrictions are imposed, people must be properly supported, however, especially when their place of work is closed down and they are not able to go to work and earn a living. People should be given the same level of support as they were in the national lockdown to help them through these incredibly challenging times. We maintain that there should be a furlough scheme that matches what was provided before. And it is important to remember that many of the jobs involved here are amongst the lowest paid. We asked for a funding package that would allow us to compensate for the failure of the national scheme that the government have put forward. We asked for significantly greater financial support in addition to the national scheme that they have implemented. Whilst government are providing extra funding, as we've heard, they are giving South Yorkshire a standard package of support, which they are providing to the areas going into Tier 3. And this will not allow us to provide the support for people that is needed. We will continue to push government to provide enough support for people and businesses, as they are now placing us in these measures, which will have such serious consequences for the people that are most impacted. It is not too late to do the right thing to support people in Sheffield, South Yorkshire, and in fact, all the people across the country that are going into Tier 3. And I would plead with government to increase the levels of support they are providing for Tier 3. Many people will be fearful of what is to come over the coming months, whether it be for the risk of the virus, their place of employment being closed, or the impact on them and their loved ones of the restrictions. We can, in Sheffield, get through this, but we can only do it by pulling together. The government's approach at this moment in time will not bring about this togetherness. So we in Sheffield have to show them how it's done. We will continue to fight for our citizens and our business in Sheffield, but I know the spirit of Sheffield will get us through. Thank you. And at the end of the next item, I think we need to make it absolutely clear what citizens and businesses can and can't do. Thank you. Have we got any other comments or questions on this particular matter? Because I think it particularly sets the scene of why we're in this position, why it's necessary, but why we do still need to fight for more support for our citizens and businesses. And the next item on the agenda, where we've got the business recovery plan, I hope that gives us some guidance and ideas of about what the funding we have got and how we can make best use of it, accepting that it's certainly not enough, but also work with our business community in ensuring that that money reaches our businesses as soon as possible. George, you've indicated before we move on.
Thank you, Chair. Just got a question for the Director of Public Health, if that's possible. I'm just want to ask that in light of what we've learned today about Tier 3 and the support available, whether as in your position as Director of Public Health, whether you have concerns that those holding roles on a low income who may be restricted by these new rules maybe put in more maybe put at increased risk if they feel that they need to take on additional work due to insufficient levels of funding. And do you think it's a genuine risk in the weeks to come? Thank you.
In short, yes, significant risk is probably unquantifiable, but significant risk all the same. And as Councillor Dawe pointed out, I mean, I glibly said the choices that people make, but I completely accept Councillor Dawe's point. Some people have less choice than others. So yeah, no, I completely accept the premise of your question, George. I think you're very right, and it is probably difficult to accurately quantify. Well, no, it's not. I won't cut to the chase. It's probably impossible to accurately quantify, but it is a risk, yes.
Thank you, Greg. Mark?
Thank you, Julie. Greg, early on in the pandemic, Sheffield came under scrutiny because of clusters of COVID outbreaks and deaths, particularly within care home settings and such like. It felt as though we were actually pretty good at testing and keeping surveillance on what was going on in terms of the pandemic spread and monitoring what was going on. And it feels that we are in an increasingly good place. So to take that forward. And I kind of welcome the fact that we're taking on more of a role, because I do have severe concerns about what national government are doing or failing to do. From your discussions with other heads of public health, do you feel the rest of the country is in a sufficiently robust position as Sheffield is? Do you feel that their data is all that it could be? Because it does feel churlish of others to be suggesting that they shouldn't go into lockdowns when the rest of the country did, even though our numbers weren't as high as London's. I wonder whether they're as well set as we are, and whether they're being as responsible as we are.
I couldn't make any aspersions as to what other DCPH have or haven't done. I mean, the recommendation for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 is a recommendation for government to make of individual places and or groups of places like South Yorkshire, rather than individual DCPH. I think most DCPH up and down the country got a pretty good handle on their epidemiology. My experience is that most DCPH have got a better handle on their local epidemiology than government, because it's more nuanced, it's more up to date, and there's a lot more context in it. And I've not yet come across a DPH anywhere in the country that doesn't have a pretty good grip on their epidemiology, and takes this pretty seriously. Actually, I just don't think those people exist.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, Greg, my question's on track and trace. It seems the whole country believes it's a bit of shambles. Every news item that comes on there's a story about its failures. Is this deal likely to enable us to improve that in Sheffield? Yes.
In short, yes. So I mean, track and trace is working. No doubt about that. It operates at a giant scale. Its problems are twofold. One, speed needs to be quicker, because if I'm a contact and I'm contacted 8 days after my potential infectiousness period, that's no use from a public health perspective. And completeness. So for Sheffield, the completeness, i.e. the number of people who are cases or contacts of cases who are found, contacted and given advice within 48 hours of index case being registered on system is 72 to 3%, and it's not getting better. So our consistent ask of government since at least August, probably before August, is we will help you not develop a separate system, but we will help you develop a complementary system to get to places that you just can't get to with a big national system. But it needs to be resourced, it needs to be funded properly. And part of the deal that's been struck is proper funding for local contact tracing. It remains to be seen how good a job we can make of it, but Calderdale are ahead of us. And just as an example, Calderdale are completing somewhere in the order of 91–92% of the cases that Calderdale Council contact tracers are responsible for. It's pretty good, actually. So the evidence from elsewhere, it leads me to a view that we will be getting our completion rate up in some of the communities that we do find harder to reach. I have high confidence in our local system, which is stood up from today, actually. That we'll get our completion rates much higher than they are. It is one of the core fundamental basics. It's wrong to say track and trace isn't working. It is working, but it just has some problems.
Okay, glad they've listened.
Thank you. Jackie?
Thank you very much, Julie. I just wanted to make a comment, really, and I suppose I wanted to, and it's a thank you, really. Thank you to you, Councillor Dorr, the leader of City Council, and all the other leaders across South Yorkshire, from Barnsley, Rotherham and Doncaster, and the City Region Mayor, and the officers, for all the work that you've been doing over the last sort of few days, well, 2 weeks, 1.5 weeks, to get us to a point to try and fight to get the best deal to help the people of Sheffield and South Yorkshire. And I want to echo everything you said, Julie, that I believe that we still have to fight for those support, that extra support for all those people on the furlough scheme, and all those people that are those people, as you quite rightly say, the choices are more difficult for them. So I want to echo that and thank you, and really thank everybody that's taken us this far. But I believe, like you, we're a steel city with steel in our hearts, and if we all come together and continue working together, we will actually beat this pandemic and we will keep on going. But I just wanted to say a great thank you. People don't understand what goes on behind the scenes in all of this, and I recognise all the meetings that people have had on over weekends, late into the night, telephone conversations, emails, text, whatever, and it's really appreciated, much appreciated. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jackie. Finally, Maz.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just echo what Councillor Drayton has said to you as politicians? I mean, I was with Mayor Ros this morning at a City Region meeting and the officers. A question to Greg, and I'll make a statement in a second. I picked up what has been said by the other leaders. One of the issues that's been highlighted is advice for those that were shielding. It seems like last time that group or cohort of people were asked to stay at home, shield, and support was provided. It seems like there's no advice from what I pick up, and it'd be good to understand what is the government's message and what support is being provided. The second question is, Greg, and I'm going to ask it, and I know you won't have the answer, but I keep getting asked this question. What is the exit plan? It's like we've moved from tier 2 to tier 3. You would have thought all the effort that's been put in, we would have gone down tier 1, but it seems as a number of people, both your colleagues, scientists, public health professionals and politicians are now saying, you know, these restrictions are not working. So it'd be good to understand, yes, there's a review in 28 days time, but I think it probably lasts longer than that. But what else was the ask from government? The second point is the point that Julie has raised a number of times. I mean, the current minimum wage is £8.72 and the furlough proposed minimum wage is £5.77. So those on those low incomes, you know, they're not getting any support for their rent, mortgage, energy bills, food bills, and so forth. So picking up one of my colleagues' questions, you know, these people are going to be forced to go out and work. So my question is, I know we're doing the lobbying, but from what I pick up, is there any scope locally to top up the furlough scheme across the region? And that's a huge ask because we don't have the millions in our bank accounts. And the second one is regarding the support for businesses. Clearly, the first scheme didn't work. We went back to government on the underspend that we had and said, can we use that differently to support the businesses that the government has failed to support? And the minister came back and said, no, you cannot use that money. So are there restrictions attached? Because there's huge sectors. I mean, it mentions hospitality, but it doesn't pick up any other sectors like childcare, retail. It's saying to retail you should open. I mean, if you go into most of our district centres and city centres, a lot of these businesses can't afford to open. The ones that are open have seen takings go down day by day. So you're earning pennies and pounds, not the thousands that you were bringing in. So, you know, that there is this huge, we've gone through a huge challenge, and it seems like tier 3, there's not enough support for businesses out there. So we've seen a huge amount of job losses and businesses closed. So I'm not asking for a response now, but it'd be good to understand, yes, we're going to be lobbying, but are we going to get the additional resource that's needed to support businesses and employees? Thanks, Chair.
I'm not really sure there's a question for the Director of Public Health in that. I think it's more around the sort of business support package question and comments that you've made, rightly so, around the fact that the support packages that the government are offering nationally, everyone, employees and businesses alike, are just saying it's simply not enough.
Well, Julia, the response from government, disgraceful. Sorry to interject. It's just heartbreaking to hear that we're just going to see. I've, like you've had calls throughout the day and emails, text messages asking for what support is out there, but it seems like there's going to be loads of businesses again are going to miss out, and this fault lies firmly with the government, not the council. Sorry to interject, Chair, but it's just appalling the way we've been treated, not here in Sheffield, but across the north.
And I think, just to reiterate the reasons why I was profoundly disappointed that the government chose to release details, as far as we've got them, regarding the decision to go into Tier 3 at midnight on Friday, and also the sort of £41 million support packaging that we got. The reason why I have real concerns about it being released this early, because we at least wanted a minimum of 24 hours to think up, to start working up a scheme to give some reassurance to businesses about which businesses are eligible, what that eligibility criteria is. We won't get that finalised in 24 hours, but at least we can give some idea of a framework about what that £30 million can be spent on and what it can't be spent on. Because what was clear from government is you can't use that funding to top up the job support scheme, which is the replacement for the furlough scheme. So the government are quite clearly saying they believe still that people can survive on £5.70 an hour. And they're saying, they're sticking to that, and therefore the funding that we have can't top up a national job support scheme. However, we've been very creative in the past, where we've gone through 10 years of austerity. We've been very creative in Sheffield in protecting the most vulnerable and supporting our businesses and our economy. So we will find ways of trying to make sure that that money goes to the right businesses at the right time to do the right thing, to make those businesses sustainable for when we get through this, to support them through it financially, but also with advice and guidance, and also their employees, and then also citizens in Sheffield, because we know the unemployment rate is increasing quite dramatically by the day. And I have been inundated with emails this morning from businesses asking me if they are eligible for this. And I'll not give any details of one, but I'll just read it out. I have someone writing to me that said they employed over 70 people in 6 pubs and restaurants. They now only have 4 pubs and restaurants, with another one due to be handed back, so they'll end up with only 3. And from over 70 people, by the end of next week, they're going to be employing less than 25 people. The hospitality trade is increasingly difficult to operate, and the news today will further increase those difficulties. The trade is down 40% of their usual levels. They do serve substantial meals in all the pubs, but also people do come in just to have a drink, and that is not going to be able to happen. So we do know that they will substantially suffer, even though they're allowed to remain open because they serve food. And their rents remain the same, their overheads remain the same. Hopefully they will be paying their employees a decent living wage. And yet that is just one example of the number of emails I've had today. And I ideally would have liked at least 24 hours more to get something back out to our business community and our citizens to be able to say, you know, this is what it is, this is what it looks like, and we will be working with our business community in order to make sure, as I say, that the money is in our bank account Saturday morning after midnight, so that we can have a scheme that gets into those businesses, the right businesses at the right time for the right people. And we will frantically be working. If it means working over all weekend, as we have done for the last two, then I will give my reassurances that I will be there doing my very best. And you can see I'm so angry about this. But we are where we are. And as I said, the Sheffield spirit will get us through this, and we can only get it through it together. So that leads me nicely into the next item, because we have the business community with us. We have a recovery plan, and we've got the best people here to help us talk through that, and their comments would be much appreciated about the circumstances we find ourselves in. And I'm sure they will give every support and offers to work with us through this particularly difficult period. So, Diana, would you like to introduce the report, and then we'll bring I can see Alexis, I can see, who can I see?
Mel.
I can see Alexis. Mel's there, I can see Mel, but I can't see Martin. And Martin's there. Welcome, thank you for coming. So over to you, Diane.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us today. And as Julie was saying, it feels very opportune that we're presenting the business recovery plan today as we're entering tier 3. So the purpose of the item today is to present the Sheffield COVID business recovery plan that we have written with the business response group. And because it's been a cooperation, the business response group members are here to talk you through the plan and the BRG themselves, which I really welcome. So it's my job really to highlight what we're asking from Cabinet today. So the first is just to note the collaboration that's been taking place at the heart of this plan with the business community. We've always been very good at boards and updates, but this has been genuine co-working, collaboration, and we really want that to continue. Secondly, we'd like you to endorse the plan as a framework for helping businesses through the impacts of COVID. And finally, acknowledge the role that the council will play in delivering elements of it and writing bids for funding. But before I hand over to Alexis, I did just want to kind of add a personal note, building on what Julie was saying, that we've spent the last few months, and indeed definitely the last few weeks, talking to businesses in our district centres and our city centre, and it's been heartbreaking stuff. A lot of our businesses, those that are hardest hit, are facing massive losses week on week, accumulated debts, and that's personal debt as well as business debt, and possible insolvency and closure. And they are desperately worried about their staff, trying to keep them employed for as long as they possibly can. But the schemes that the government are putting forward, they are telling us they are insufficient and don't work for them. They're also worried about people that they do manage to keep on, the mental health issues. And certainly furlough being at 67% is something that the business community have raised with us as well, and do not think is sufficient. The uncertainty around how long the closure will be as well is something that they've raised with us. So they absolutely need support now. Things that Julie was mentioning, they want clarity. Today we've had hundreds of emails from businesses saying, are we in or out? What does this mean for us? What does the scheme look like? They want access to the funding, nationally available very quickly, and they want us to try and fill the gaps around the national funding. But they're also worried about the long term. They want to know that we're in it for the long haul. They are saying, okay, temporary closures. They understand the information that kind of Greg's been presenting and the need to do this. So they want to know from us that we'll be with them when it comes to reopening potentially next spring. They want reassurance that we'll stimulate demand to get people back into the hospitality sector. They want us to help them when they're accumulated debt trying to reopen and survive as businesses. And they do want to know what the recovery plan is. So although it's tempting and we must focus now on what we do with businesses now to get them through the next few weeks and months, we also need to keep an eye onto the future. And that's why I think the recovery plan today is really opportune. So I'll leave it there for now. I'm happy to answer questions later, and I'll hand over to Alexis. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. For those people who don't know me, my name is Alexis Karachi. I'm currently one of the interim executive directors at Sheffield Chamber. I'm also one of the founding directors of Sheffield Property Association, and I also run a business in the city. I am grateful for the opportunity to talk to you briefly this afternoon about the work we've been doing in the business response group and the production of the business response plan that is before you. As the chair has already introduced, Mel from Sheffield Digital is also here, and also Martin McCurvey from AESL, who will be saying a few words after me, so I will rattle through. A lot is happening today, evidently. As Di has just talked, and as has the chair very eloquently, about the impact that these restrictions are having on the business community. I'm very alive to those personally, but equally, we represent a lot of different business organizations who have been involved in producing this plan. So I have prepared a few remarks just to structure my thoughts. It was obvious to all of us in the business community and the town hall in March, when this pandemic hit us, that it was going to have a huge impact on jobs and local businesses. Genuinely, in a matter of hours, phone calls were made and the business community gathered together, rolled up its sleeves, and started working with the council on making sure that businesses got the support and relief where possible that they needed, and that we would start working on a plan that would see this city through the pandemic. We've been one team working together, which I've personally found really rewarding and satisfying, to actually see genuine partnership between our town hall and the business community. We call ourselves the BRG. Everyone in the business community is volunteering their time and expertise and commitment on a voluntary basis. We don't say that to ask for thanks, but just to acknowledge that we care deeply about the city, and we do want to work with our town hall officers and political leaders to see the city get through this pandemic as well as we can. Mel and Martin are here alongside me to talk. There are also members of the BRG who are observing, and I want to put on record how much I've enjoyed working with everybody on this process. It's been challenging. We're dealing with some really tough issues, but the spirit of collaboration at times has been genuinely inspiring. I also want to put on record, on behalf of all of the private sector bodies who have been involved, our thanks to officers who do put in, as members will appreciate, tireless hours, often behind the scenes, working long, long hours, sometimes without much acknowledgement publicly. The work that they do, the work that we've done together, does make a real and positive difference, so we'd like to thank them. We're sat here today facing tier 3 restrictions. There will be some people watching this or will read about this wondering why on earth we're publishing a recovery plan on the day that we're locking down parts of our economy. Businesses are fighting for their lives and they need support now. We're not immune to that. In the coming hours and days, the business community is keen to work with our political leaders to understand how, as the chair has said, how we get support to the right businesses in the right way at the right time. That's incredibly important, but we also need a longer term plan for our business and for our communities that will see us through this pandemic. This isn't a business plan produced for business groups to benefit business groups. We are absolutely intent on kickstarting a transformation in making our economy fairer. That's essential, and that's something that has driven us from day one. We genuinely want to work with the town hall to shape a stronger, greener and fairer economy. The whole city needs to be involved in this. It can't just be for business groups just to do this on their own. We're not representative of the wider city. So we want to make sure this is an inclusive process. Before I hand over to Mel, as co-chair of the business response group, again, I do want to personally, and I've been asked to by the Chamber of Commerce, by Sheffield Property Association, by Sheffield Business Together, the IOD, the Company of Cutlers, that we have genuinely welcomed the opportunity to work with the council. There are people in the city and outside of the city that say that we're not good at partnership in Sheffield. There are people that say that the private sector isn't good at working with the town hall. And alongside everything else we've done in the last few months, I hope that this plan and the work that we're doing together is evidence that we can work together. The council has been open. The council has listened. And I'd like to thank in particular Councillor Azar Iqbal, who his leadership and really and genuinely giving us the time and space to work together and to listening to the ideas that have come from the business community. This pandemic presents real and serious challenges for our city. But might I suggest there is one silver lining that exists as a result of what we're living through right now. We are showing, and we will continue to show, that the business community can work with the council. We've got to seize this opportunity, however much the challenges surround us are sometimes a little intimidating, we must really seize this opportunity. We must keep working together. Dare I say it? I think our city needs us to. I want to hand over to Mel now, who's just going to talk briefly about what's in the plan, and then she'll hand over to Martin. So over to you, Mel.
Thank you, Alexis. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having us this afternoon. So I'm Mel Kanarek. I'm one of the founders and directors of Sheffield Digital. And Sheffield Digital is the association for the people and businesses who work in digital technology industries across the city region. If we look at Sheffield, we're looking at an economy that's worth over £11 billion a year and is home to something like 30,000 businesses. So how on earth do you go about creating a business recovery plan for a city of this size? Well, the answer to that is you have to be really, really focused, and that's what we've tried to be. I can't go into a whole lot of detail this afternoon. I'd be here for hours, but I just want to give you a brief overview of what we've come up with. We've identified 6 priority areas that we think will help Sheffield's businesses and the economy bounce back from the pandemic. The first is that we need to stimulate demand in the local economy, and that involves giving confidence to businesses so that they can invest and create new jobs. Now, at the moment, that's really tough. That's not something we're going to be able to do straight away. But what we have seen is that some businesses are still growing and they are still hiring. And what we'll need to do is look at how we give more businesses the confidence to do the same thing. The second one of our priorities is around keeping our city and district centres safe and secure, so that when people leave their homes and visit businesses that do stay open, they feel really safe to be out and about. Third priority is around helping people to follow a dream and start up their own business. New businesses create new jobs and new opportunities. Unfortunately, we are going to see businesses that are going to fail during the pandemic, and we'll need to be replacing those. We'll be encouraging people who perhaps are made redundant to consider whether they might start a business. So part of the plan is going to be to look at how we make it easier for all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds to start a business in the city. Fourth priority is around helping people to get back to work. Jobs are changing all the time. You know, I'm in the digital industries and the change is so fast we can barely keep up. So everyone is going to need to be able to access training and advice that will help communities get back to work. And the plan will be focused on making sure that no one gets left behind. The fifth priority is that we need to invest more in culture. And that might sound strange in the context of talking about business and the economy, but culture is not just paintings in a gallery or performers on a stage. It's about how we live our lives. And it's about celebrating who we are and where we live. We want to do more to celebrate the communities in Sheffield, to help build confidence and to help people with their mental health and their well-being, as well as attracting visitors back to the city. The final priority is that we can't stop. We're just starting to gather some momentum, and that momentum needs to continue. So we need a longer term plan to support the growth of the economy and to make that economy fairer. So the sixth priority is to build on the work we've started so we have a long-term economic strategy for the city, and it's one that's in partnership between business and the local authority. Sheffield's no different from any other city. It needs to have a strong economy. A strong economy is one that creates good quality jobs, improves people's lives, and generates tax revenues that help fund council services. Let's not forget that. So a lot of work has gone into this plan, and we really encourage anyone in the city to read it because we want input and ideas. This isn't something that's been created and will live in a bubble. The idea is that we work together so that we can shape a fairer economy that works for everybody. And that's why this collaboration has to continue. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Martin McCurvey, who's going to say a few words now about how the business community is going to work more closely with the council through the City Growth Board. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you, Alexis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to begin by saying I think I've got a weak connection, so if I do disappear or you don't hear me, I'm going to apologise in advance, but fingers crossed I will stay alive for the next 2 minutes. I want to talk briefly about the 6th priority that Mel has talked about in our recovery plan, and that is the creation of a new City Growth Board. We have 2 challenges in our city at the moment. We need to help businesses with short-term relief, and Mel and Alexis have very helpfully outlined the role of the business response group, our recovery plan, and indeed the work we're doing with the Mayor and the city region. But we also have to think strategically about the longer term and how we're going to grow the economy of Sheffield in a way that makes our economy work for everyone. And in addressing that challenge, we very much want to build on the momentum of the business response group and the recovery plan. And the structure and foundation for this longer term approach will be our new City Growth Board. This is a new partnership and a collaboration involving the council, the business community, our health and academic anchor institutions, and the charity and voluntary sectors. And this reflects the new economic circumstances and the challenges that we as a city are going to have to face over the medium to longer term. I do want to put on note the business community's gratitude to the council for how they've engaged around this agenda, and a particular thanks to Leader Dorr and Councillor Iqbal for their work and contribution. But we must also be very honest with ourselves. This can't be simply another board. The ambition and the intent we have is to create a new board where everyone around the table will commit and strive to work together and in new ways that will ensure that we collectively deliver the very best outcomes for everyone in our city. We're also very conscious that in January, we have the very exciting prospect of Kate Josephs joining us as the new Chief Executive. We want to embrace her arrival with real positivity and enthusiasm. And indeed, we want Kate to know that she's coming to a city where we work together and want to do things together for the betterment of everyone in our city. And this new growth board gives us that real solid foundation. And I would encourage us all to be confident in our ability to succeed. Sheffield is a great city. We have regional relevance. We are relevant nationally, and we can also be relevant internationally. So this collaboration is a platform for attracting investment, for supporting our businesses, embracing the challenges and opportunity of the green economy, and also making sure that we care for the very vulnerable in our city. We do live in challenging times, but if we all commit around this new board, then I do think we can look forward to a very, very exciting and prosperous future. And just in closing, can I put on the record, for the benefit of everyone, the thanks from the business community to everything that our council is presently doing, whether that's in public health or in terms of the work that is being done tirelessly around the clock to help our communities and our businesses. We in the business community are committed to working with the council collectively to do the best we can in these challenging times. And we certainly do not take for granted the work and the commitment that you're putting into everything at the moment to make our city the best it can in very difficult times. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Mel, and thank you, Alexis, and also thank you to Diana. I'm going to ask Maz if he wants to say anything before I open it up for questions, and then I'm sure you may want to come in later, and I certainly have a few comments to make. So,
yeah,
want to say anything, Maz?
I'll make my comments at the end, Chair. That'd be easier.
Okay, right. Thank you. Have I got any questions or comments? Paul?
Oh, thank you all for the presentation. Really appreciate that. I'll give my declaration of interest. I'm a member through my company of the Sheffield Chamber. The one thing that does concern me is the Chamber represents the leading businesses. It represents a lot of the major players in the city, but how will you expand this plan out to the 70% plus of businesses that are not members of the Chamber? That's always been a concern of mine. And what will be the plans to integrate them into this policy? I accept in turnover wise, the businesses who are members of the Chamber are probably the highest in the city, but in actual business units, there's a good 70% are not members of the Chamber. I just want to know how you're going to take that forward to get to those businesses. Thank you.
Alexis, do you wish to respond to that?
No, I'd be happy to take that question, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wood. You make a very valid point, and I'll answer it in two ways, if I may. So, firstly, this is a plan that isn't exclusively owned or has been shaped by Sheffield Chamber. I would draw attention to the Chamber, Sheffield Digital, Sheffield Business Together, the Company of Cutlers, the IOD, the Federation of Small Businesses have been involved. But I would also go a step further and say that's still not enough. I draw your attention back to the remarks that Mel made, which is we want as many different individuals and businesses involved in this process. So I do hope that this plan will not only be acknowledged by Cabinet this afternoon, but I hope it will generate a lot of media reporting in our communities, because every business has a role to play in shaping this plan. I wasn't expecting to say this, but I will say it nevertheless. I'm a new director at Sheffield Chamber alongside my colleague Louisa Harrison Walker, and we've said now publicly and privately two things. One, we have every intent of putting in place the foundations to build the strongest Chamber of Commerce in the UK. We've got a long way to go in doing that. But perhaps more relevant to your question is, we want to build a Chamber of Commerce where every single business, however small, however large, sees benefit in being a member of the Chamber. So we do see, in a way, this process of producing this plan and collaborating with the Council would give businesses, however small, reasons to get involved, and for them to know that they've got a home at Sheffield Chamber where they can play a role in the future of the city. And if appropriate, I'll be very happy to talk to you about that separately, about how we get small businesses from the north, south, east and west of the city involved in this process.
Thank you. Mary.
Thanks. I'm just interested because you mentioned culture, and we know obviously that's my portfolio, but some of us work together in the cultural collective, and I think I agree absolutely that culture is going to play a big part in this, and I see lots of opportunities, maybe with your help, with this new board's help, for younger people who maybe are now been made redundant or just not working because of the COVID, and to bring them into the cultural side. There's lots of creative people, there's lots of freelancers who have added a lot of cultural life to the city, who are now, sadly trying to earn a living the best way they can, but it's difficult for them at the moment. I think some of our large institutions are going to survive. They're in a good place, but there's one or two that are still waiting to hear from government about what help they're going to. I'm thinking of Sheffield Theatres here. They've not heard yet what help they're going to get from government. Those are my comments, but just to say, what else do you think from the cultural side of the city, the creative side of the city, which is often unsung nationally in Sheffield? We don't sing, we don't shout enough about it. How do you think we can add to that from the cultural aspect to the economy?
Who wishes to comment?
Okay,
Alexis.
But I'm happy to take. So as you've noted, Councillor Lee, we're working together in the Culture Collective and the Cultural Consortium. People have been surprised when we were putting the plan together. We got a couple of comments from the business community saying, "Why is there culture in a business recovery plan?" And that's because we actually completely agree with you that culture can provide a number of opportunities for the younger people in our communities, but also culture is a really big part of our economy. It's it attracts people, it attracts businesses. So I think what we need to do, and this is what we're trying to do with this plan, is link things together. Dare I say it, but traditionally, some people might argue that there's culture over here and then there's businesses over here. We're actually saying, no, they're together. One thing that we, particularly in the Chamber and the Sheffield Property Association, are very keen to do is to work with yourself and to work with colleagues in the council to ensure that national government gives us our fair share of funding for culture. I wouldn't want to make too much of a detailed point on this, but we can be doing a lot more. And I know we'll do a lot more in the coming months and years to get more funding for culture into Sheffield. And I think we can do that by joining up the cultural sector with the business community and making the case for Sheffield. And I know that we've been talking about that, and I want to carry on that conversation through this pandemic. It's really important. We've got to get funding from government to support our cultural bodies and not just the larger ones.
Thanks.
I absolutely agree with that. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to say initially, I think it's really heartwarming to hear Alexis and all the other speakers talk about how you're collaborating together. I think at times like this, you know, the sectors do really need to come together. And I think I've seen it in education and skills, how schools have also risen to the challenge and have really sort of gone over and above in coming together to try and address a lot of the difficulties that we have. I think the only comment I want to add to what's already been said is in relation to skills, we need to think about the crossover between well, actually the difference in the way of working now, because I think in the past we perhaps had different priorities for skills, and I think going forward we need to look at what will the demand be in the business sector in retraining and looking at new priorities that we might have and how we can look at addressing that in the up and coming new skill strategy that we're currently working on. So I think there's a lot of new areas that we need to tie up together, and I think, you know, going forward for the people of Sheffield, we need to make sure that that's as accessible as possible for different individuals that need to retrain, but also for the business community as well. Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Mel, I don't know if you wanted to say anything on skills, but just to draw members' attention to, again, another collaboration that has kind of spun off from the work that we've been doing on the business recovery plan. We're now working, Sheffield Chamber, Sheffield Digital are now working very closely with Opportunity Sheffield within the council and starting to really tie up skills programs with the business community so that they start to work in a way perhaps they haven't done before. As Mel has said and as Martin have said, is that the business plan that's presented to you this afternoon, it is an important document. We welcome the council support, but it is the start of a process of tying things together and to recognise that we've got a lot of work to do on skills, and I'm very confident that we can do a lot for our younger people and a lot for our communities and to help people with lifelong learning if we work together. So I'm really heartened to see that we can do that.
Okay.
I'd just also add to that.
Okay.
Julie, Chair, if I could just make the point on skills, which I think the question is very relevant and the comments are relevant. One of the things we also have to do is the business community has to engage more with our schools and our colleges, with young people in creating opportunities. And I think we have a lot of work to do in that regard, where we can create opportunity for young people through apprenticeships, through other entry points into businesses, where we can begin to shape the future for them in terms of their direction. And I think we have a lot of work to do on that, but I think the business community needs to think about some strategies around how that can be delivered. I'm a director of a company, AAS Seal. We're located in Rotherham and Sheffield. We're global. Last year, we engaged with 5,000 school children. We have 140 apprentices, and we're very proud of the fact that every one of them comes from the most deprived parts of our city region. And in some of those families, they're the first people to have worked. And I think we need to see more of that drive from businesses to create opportunities and skills for young people.
Just a quick comment from me before I bring Jackie in is on that particular point. I mean, skills and developing and supporting and nurturing young people into adulthood, and what that means. You know, it's making sure they've got the basic skills to navigate life. It's got the basic skills that every employer requires, and then it's also got sort of the specific skills that are needed for that particular job. I'm also very passionate about the adult education programme, because we all know that how we start out in life is not always where we finish, and we all collide with opportunities, don't we? And so you might start out doing one thing in your career or in a job, and then 10 years later you're doing something completely different. So I think it's really important that we ensure all our young people have got the right skills, but also lifelong learning is particularly important to me, because not just them themselves change and they may want to access learning later in life for whatever reasons, but also environments change and we have to reskill people up for the changing environment. So I'm extremely passionate about that particular part of the plan. And I know that, you know, without giving too much detail, one of the asks of government was to bring forward the adult education budget so we can start spending it, that we got through the devolution deal, that we can start spending it right now. But needless to say, the government weren't receptive to that either. So I'll take Jackie now before I make my final comments. Jackie.
Thank you very much, Julie. And thanks to everybody that's presented. When I read the report, I mean, the report has got so much in it, and such a lot of effort has obviously gone into looking at all areas, and there's loads of ideas. And people have mostly said the questions I was going to ask, because I was going to ask the same as, I won't repeat it, but the same as Councillor Wood, about those smaller organisations that often I live and represent Burn Grieve Ward, and we have lots of very entrepreneurial people doing lots of things. I doubt if they're members of the chamber, and it's making sure you get out like which you've answered. I think skills is another important point. And as somebody who I was going to say profited, but I left school with no qualifications, went back in through adult education and then back in. I know how important it is. So the one thing I was thinking about, it's the work, not just young people, it's those people who perhaps are on furlough now, who are furloughed. And we used to have a thing called paid educational leave. So people in work could actually get education to give them different skills in case they wanted to go through, as the leader was saying, go through to another job. And maybe we've got an opportunity here to use with the digital connection and everybody connecting digitally. And I know that we've done some training in our early years and in our social work. We've carried on to using the training digitally. I know it's not always the best, but I think it is a possibility, and there is a possibility those people who are furloughed could do some training in that time they're on furlough, which would give them an opportunity to perhaps get training in the skills that we need in our area. And we know there are skills, we haven't always got a skills match to the jobs we've got. So it's just a great opportunity, and this is a great opportunity to carry on the work going forward. You know, let's just get ground down by COVID and the pandemic and where we are now. Look to the future, but use the opportunities that we've found whilst we've been through these challenging times, but actually build on them and think, can we use them in a different way? Can we, while we've got this, they're stuck at home, they can't do anything, get them onto some training. Anyway, just a thought. Thank you all very much. It's been really interesting. I commend the report, and of course we'll be voting for it.
Paul Wood, you wish to ask another?
Yeah, it's really just a very simple question to Alexis. Obviously, I really welcome that you want to expand the chamber membership into some of the smaller businesses. Obviously, we're hitting this stage where most of those small businesses have got very little cash. Will the chamber look at doing some introductory deal to get the membership into the chamber at this stage? and some offer that we can do over the next 12 months, which helps those businesses who are really struggling with overdrafts at the bank and everything to become involved with the process.
It would be, it'd be right for me to say, Councillor Wood, that as a businessman, I'm always up for doing a deal. But more seriously, we work really hard at Sheffield Chamber to constantly look at our membership levels to make sure that they're competitively priced. But your point is well made. I'll be very pleased to talk to you about what we might do to make it even easier for smaller businesses to join. I wouldn't want to, Chair, use this opportunity to pitch chamber membership, but I would draw attention to the fact that it is in some instances only £10–20 a month, and it does give you access to a lot of other discounts for local businesses. So, but we've got to get that message out there. But I will say again, many of you don't know me, but I am quite bold. I'm really keen to make sure that there is a reason that every one of the businesses in Sheffield, as Mel said, there's 30,000 of them. I'm going to build a chamber of commerce where every one of those businesses sees a reason to join. It's just going to take us a while, but I'd like to be part of that conversation with you.
Okay, there it is. That's the offer, Paul.
Thank you.
Right, I'm just going to make a few comments before I let Mazza have the final word, basically, before I take us through the.
Chair, I don't know whether you saw, but I thought Mel had her hand up at one point.
Mel?
So apologies.
It was just to come back on some of the skills conversation.
Okay.
But really, to say, first of all, I completely support everything, all the points that were made. The skills part of the plan was very important to me, and I had the opportunity to work with a lot of colleagues within the council. And the thing that it allowed us to do was, perhaps for the first time, is really start to figure out all the different things that are going on and all the things that could be joined up and where there are gaps and how we might connect those gaps very quickly. The point that Councillor Drayton made around looking at people who are furloughed or at risk of redundancy and finding opportunities for them to understand what transferable skills they have and how those skills might be applied in a very different role or a very different industry. I think that's a great opportunity. It's an opportunity to move people forward in their job journey to perhaps into jobs that are more secure, more rewarding, higher paid, higher skilled. There's a big opportunity here. The trick will be whether we have the resource and the energy to grasp it and push it through, because there will be a huge demand for really high quality and advice and guidance for people. So when we talk about skills, as well as talking about the training part and what goes on in schools and universities and other forms of training outside of formal education, we must look at the advice and guidance and the help that people are getting, the information that's available to them about the pathways and the routes and the sorts of jobs that they might take. So that's part of the challenge, but I think it's one we can address.
Completely agree with that, Mel. Thank you. Right, and just a couple of comments for me before, as I say, I'll let Maz have the final word, and yourselves, actually. I'll give you the final word. I'm just really pleased to see the number and, you know, of the different partners. Because when we, like you said, Alexis, earlier, when we talk about business, everybody immediately thinks about the private sector. You know, it's just the private sector in business to make a profit. And of course, there are many of them, and they employ, they provide services and goods that we absolutely need. And they employ people and they train them and they give them a decent living. They are very good employers and provide very good goods and services. But I also see that, you know, my business, my personal business, is to make a living. You know, so whatever I'm doing, I'm in business to do that, whether I'm working in the public sector or the private sector, I'm working for myself. And thinking about retirement next year, I am probably thinking about being one of those, potentially one of those startups as well. So as I say, we travel through life and go through different opportunities. But also we have the Sheffield City Council. It's a £1.4 billion business in effect. We have the University of Sheffield, and that is, as we all know, is a big business and has to be run as a business. And we all know we've got very small businesses that most people have alluded to. So I'm really pleased to see the number of organisations particularly that represent all businesses, and your commitment to engaging as many more as possible. Some that just want to be consulted, some want to be left alone, but some want guidance and advice when they need it. And I think that's really important, that you're dedicated and committed to doing that collectively. I also just want to point out one of the what I'm really pleased to see, one of the sections within the report, which is about what does success look like. And I've seen that long list, and you know, I'm really pleased to see that, because often we create strategies and then we lose sight of actually what are the outcomes. And you've made it absolutely clear that the outcomes that you want to see is outcomes for people, business and place. And I'm really pleased to see place in there, because I'm really passionate about place shaping. Because the place that we live in shapes our lives more than anything else. It's about the jobs that are available, it's about the education and the skills that we get, it's about the housing, it's about the environment, it's about the cultural offer, it's about absolutely everything. So I'm so pleased to see you've got that in about places, and recognising place shaping encompasses all that. I very much look forward to supporting you through this. I know Mazza's the one that will be very close to it, but anything that I can do to support it, you know where I am, and I'm absolutely behind it. And I want to thank you all for, as I say, your dedication and commitment to the people of Sheffield, and to the businesses, and especially at this moment in time. So I'm going to ask Mazza to make the final comments, and then I'm going to ask Alexis, Martin and Mel if you just want to make a final comment. If you don't, that's fine too. So thank you very much. And then I'll go on to the recommendations in a minute. Maz.
Fine. Sorry, my daughter's just walked by. Yeah, just picking up from what you've said, Julie. I mean, everybody's heard what's just been said. I think we're a very, very lucky city that we have individuals like this. I mean, in a sense, Alexis has taken a few words I was going to use. Inspiration, definitely, Julia. It's inspired me. These members that have come together, and as it's been pointed out, they're not here. They're not in a paid capacity. They're doing it as volunteers. It's not just today. They've been going out speaking to businesses, be it in the morning, be it in the evening. We're at 18-hour, that's the aspiration, an 18-hour economy. But the challenges that we've faced, and as Alexis said, you know, it was the business community that approached the council. I remember that Monday night hearing the announcements from the Prime Minister. I was receiving similar emails to you, Chair, today. Businesses, the anxiety, not knowing what's happening, and this group coming together that week, not waiting for any guidance, not waiting for a nudge, but understanding the severity and the challenge that we faced. They came together because we as a council, you know, I'm grateful for the plaudits, but there is no chance. And our staff team, incredible. We couldn't have done it on our own. And that true collaboration of working together, I mean, not all the officers are here that have worked, you know, night and day, weekends, experiencing similar network issues as us as well, have gone that extra mile. So I'm grateful to the officer corps and the business response group. Just 2 quick points, if I can, Chair. As it's pointed out, this is about the here and now, and it's important we address that. there's a piece of work we've been doing internally with members around how do we, in a sense, align ourselves with the priorities that the business response group have just outlined. So there was £2 million that was ring fence in the budget that was agreed this year. I'd like to, Chair, bring that process forward. So I'll have a discussion with you after that, after this meeting, to look at how we can use some of the existing resource that we have to support the economy. And that work is around supporting the district centres and the city centres. So that's one recommendation. I think from what I pick up from colleagues, I think if we can, Chair, with your permission, and it's putting a bit more pressure on the volunteers again, I think, you know, a session at full council, Julie, cross-party, because we do get asked that question, not just by politicians, but by members of the public. You know, what is the council doing? What is the city doing? I think here's an opportunity, like we have done with the public health updates at full council. Sorry to put the business response group here, but if we can, Chair, through you, if we could recommend that this does go to full council, I think it gives those members and the members of the public an opportunity to hear what the city is doing. And it's the city, as it's been said, pulling together in the most challenging times I've ever experienced. And it's not over yet, Chair. As you announced today, we're moving into tier 3. There's another challenge for the business response group. And I just need to add, they meet every Friday, like clockwork, every Friday since the pandemic. There's a group of volunteers to look at how do we help those businesses, how do we improve the situation, and so forth. So I'm internally grateful to you all and my colleagues that give me the support as well to go out there and work on behalf of the council and elected representatives to come up with this plan. So thank you all, and I hope my colleagues will support the additional 2 recommendations I've just put forward. I mean, just on the technical side, Chair, we can bring a report forward to you. So we're not looking for a decision on the £2 million today, but just want to make that announcement that we will be making this additional money available to support our businesses. Thank you, Chair.
Right, any final comments, Alexis, Mel, Martin?
Just to acknowledge what Mazza has, well, Councillor Iqbal, if I may, apologies.
Call me Mazza, Alexis.
It's my Sunday best today, Mazza. It's the first time I've worn a suit since February.
It gets called worse, Alexis.
That £2 million is really important, and we, you know, if that is possible, then we must build on that with the private sector investing as well. The one thing that we're very clear on is that this isn't a plan that's now got to be delivered exclusively by the council. So I'm talking to my colleagues in the chamber. Martin and I are talking to our colleagues in the SPA about how we all invest in making this plan realisable. But to thank you.
I mean, just very quickly, if I can, Chair, I've had ward members from Stocksbridge, I've had ward members from Mosborough, Bayton, across the city say, you know, our district centre, our high streets need that support now. We've also got an additional £500,000 of European funding, which is ironic as Brexit is another challenge for our businesses. So again, that brings in business, the point that Mel raised about providing information, guidance and advice. This is just specifically for businesses. So 2 projects we'll be bringing forward very quickly. I mean, the final comment, if I can make it, Chair, and sorry, when you do speak to the ministers, I hear that Boris is saying £150,000 isn't enough. So if you can ask him how we can survive on £5.72, that'd be brilliant. Cheers, Chair.
Well, yeah, I wish I'd have said that, actually. Yeah, the rumours are that he can't survive on £150,000 a year.
There'll be a few nannies getting laid off.
Okay, right. let's get on to the recommendations. Mazza, you've made 2 requests, I would say. One is this, the recovery fund. And as I understand it, and I think Diane has put it on the chat, there is a leaders report in the system with a decision regarding that recovery fund. So that will be the process for that. So you'll have to see whether the leader signs that that leaders report. So you can make your own mind up whether you think I'm going to do that, having said what I've said today. And then the other one is, I don't think we're able to decide today whether it goes to full council at the next one, because I know there's already an agenda set, but I'll certainly take it forward in that process and see if we can shuffle something around, because it's about timing, isn't it? It's sort of like, if it can't come to the next council, would it come to the council after another month later? So I'll see if we can shuffle something around and see how we can get it onto the council. So I'll take both those requests forward, and you will see a response in the next certainly few days on that matter. So again, thank you very much for coming. It's as we say, it's been an aspirational and inspirational discussion through dark times. It's not like we're all going through this doom and gloom and these really dark times, but actually we do need some light, don't we? And we do need some hope and inspiration to get us through it. So thank you for that. The Cabinet is asked to note the role of the Council in developing, as part of a collaboration, which is really important, with the Sheffield Business Response Group, endorse the plan as a framework to help address the economic impacts of COVID. Note and acknowledge the role the Council will play in delivering elements of the plan, with the plan informing the city's bids for COVID relief and recovery funding, and then note the collaborative approach taken to develop the action plan, creating the basis for a new long-term relationship with the private sector in Sheffield, working together to help to shape the city's long-term economic strategy. So can we approve all those recommendations, Cabinet?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Right. Right. Thank you very much. As I say, thank you, Alexis, Martin and Mel. We're going on to the next agenda item, and have a good day the rest of the day, and take care. Please take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also at this point, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Terry Fox to chair. I think we're on item 9. So can I say thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
Good luck, Chair.
When I get on with this urgent stuff. Okay, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. And I think we all send our best wishes with Julie today. A really hectic day for everything she's got to do for the rest of the day. I think Julie got it. I think we're on item 10. I just look for approval on that. Is that correct? So item 10 is retirement of staff, and Cabinet are asked to convey their thanks for the work on there. We've got a number of staff there who've spent a hell of a lot of time, actually, over 20 years with the council. Can Cabinet agree that, and we'll send our thanks to them?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you very much. On that next item is item 11, the month 5 capital approvals. Damien usually does that, but I believe he's unwell at the process, so we wish him a speedy recovery. If Tim's available to do this, Tim, can you introduce yourself and the item, please?
Yeah, sure. My name's Tim Hardy. I'm Head of Commercial Business Development in Finance and Commercial Services. And this report is the regular monthly update we receive on the capital programme, introducing new projects and also updating members on any variations to existing schemes that have previously been approved. So this month in the report, this relates to month 5 of this current financial year. We've got 13 new projects, adding £15 million or over £50 million into the programme for this financial year. 3 variations, which is resulting in a net reduction of 14 million, and 1 project is being reprofiled with no impact on the actual budgets. It's the usual format, so in Appendix 1 to the Cabinet paper, starting on page 77, you've got all the full details of the schemes, and Appendix 2 details the external grants arrangements that fund some of these, as well as the grant payments you need to make to third parties to deliver some of the projects. I don't intend to go through every single item, but if it would be helpful, I'm happy to cover the key highlights if that would be useful, or happy to take the report through for approval.
Thanks, Tim. If you want just to highlight a couple of the approvals, if that'd be good. Yeah, absolutely fine. Okay, so going with the higher value items then, we've got the Kirkbridge Dyke Flood Alleviation Project. That's £139,000 worth of funding that's doing some work into some of our culvert network with the objective of reducing flooding to some residential properties near Manor Park. It's detailed from page 77 onwards. More significant decision is the new cremators on the City Road crematorium. That's a £2.4 million project. Unfortunately, that's been unavoidably delayed due to the impact of COVID-19. So at the moment, the intention now is to actually commence that project in the spring of 2021. So that means slipping that £2.4 million budget forwards from this financial year into the next, into 21-22. We're also moving ahead with the work on Millhouse's Cricket Club Pavilion, £270,000 scheme here. The idea is to modernise those facilities, build a new pavilion, and also carry out some pitch improvements to that local amenity area. That scheme is actually going to be delivered by the Millhouse's Works Cricket Club. So they're responsible for the project management, and therefore they're the ones who are going to be dealing with this under a grant funding arrangement with the council. The details of that particular arrangement are set out in Appendix 2 at page 113 of the report, if you need further details on that. So good working there with the local community and organisations. In terms of the largest value financially in terms of decision today, we've got the council housing refurbishment works for a 5-year period from 2021 to 26 going ahead. That's a £14.5 million investment in our council housing stock, and that's actually part of the already agreed 30-year HRA business plan. So this is bringing forward that particular scheme from that strategy and implementing it. This is going to bring nearly 3,000 properties up to the decent home standards by 2026, including some 500 plus that are currently below that standard. So clearly important work needs to be undertaken there. It's a full refurbishment that covers kitchens, bathrooms, windows and doors, electrical and heating systems. And there's also 467 properties that require window and door improvements, which basically is important for their thermal performance and also helping us reduce future maintenance costs on those properties as well. So we've got a substantial number of properties benefiting from the scheme. The decision here enables us to actually go out to tender for a 3-year contract initially, with an option to extend for a further 2 years to cover the full 5-year programme of works. And that maintenance work would start in the financial year 2021-22. Finally, just to draw attention, Cabinet's attention to a couple of schemes in relation to the education estate. There's a £229,000 accessibility project that's being implemented for Shooters Grove Primary School. That relates to enabling a pupil to move up into Key Stage 2. So certain parts of the building need improvements there to ensure that accessibility is put in place that meets their educational health and care plan. So we're getting that work underway in good time before they move to that part of their education. And then finally, the Pitworth Primary School, there's some structural works here relating to the dining hall. This is a project that's been to council before. It's £880,000 scheme that's been approved. This is a £135,000 budget increase. Now we've fully scoped the scheme. So this related to some structural damage that was spotted in the school dining hall back in 2018. The building's been made safe, and we're now in a position to move ahead with this scheme to enable us to actually replace the school dining hall where the defects were basically located.
The idea is to replace the existing kitchen and dining facilities with a new modular pod structure, which is going to be located on the current school car park. This will enable us to actually demolish the facilities that are no longer fit for purpose, and then we'll subsequently be able to reinstate the car park once that's actually been completed. And by moving the configuration of the site round in this way, that also enables us to ensure that the new facilities are sited away from the area which has experienced ground movement, which has basically given rise to this situation and the damage to the building in the first place. Those are probably the key decisions from a financial point of view. The report also details a number of financial moves in budgets and so forth, which we see every month, basically moving the money around to actually facilitate those projects going ahead. And also a number of feasibility studies being kicked off as well, more smaller value, but they'll obviously come back to Cabinet when we're in a position to proceed with a full proposal on those. So that's a quick overview for you.
Thank you, Tim. Is there any questions for Tim? Comments? Paul, Councillor Ward?
Yeah, I'd just like to record my personal thanks to Mark Threef and David, who've been working on restructuring the repair service and getting all this work done and back on track for us. I think they've done an outstanding job. And I think it's the first time I've seen Mark at one of these, I think, that I've been at. So I'd just like to personally thank all the hard work they've put in to getting this service sorted out finally. And thank you very much for the effort you've put in, Mark.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Lee?
Yeah, I just want to mention the work that we do in our parks again this month, because it came last month of works that we were doing in Hillsborough and Ecclesfield Park, but there's a range of parks that we've done some small, spent some small amounts of money in, but nevertheless, you know, at this time with COVID, parks are the only place you can go for enjoyment and exercise. And I think the fact that we've had the foresight to invest in those parks with public health money and other monies that have been available, I think, you know, is going to be paying off dividends at this time. And just to mention at Mather Road, which is in my area, and we have got some funding for that, and we're kickstarting that with a small amount of work, and we'll see that develop over the next few years. I know we've got a great friends group down there, and we've all been working on that for a couple of years now, all the councillors in that area. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Councillor Jones, Mark Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'd really like to support all the economic work being done around protecting our city against flooding. The proposal brought on Kirkbridge today just highlights the detail that we're doing in terms of making sure that we are prepared for the climate change that we are witnessing at the moment. We must make sure that we get this city ready to face all the changes that are coming, and this work is yet another indication of the actions this council is doing to protect the citizens against climate change. So I really welcome this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. If there's no more, I'd just like to add my thanks to the governors and staff, and also local care councillors who have from Pipworth. This is a real kind of a major investment, over £1 million into for parents and the kids who are good at that school. It's going to make a massive difference. It's been a long standing issue that we've had to deal with, certainly within my ward, and it'll make a massive contribution in that way forward. And also just like Mark's just said regarding the work going on, the 139,000 investment into protecting properties, residential and commercial, is a massive boost. Even in these hardened times that we're going through, it just shows that we're trying to invest in our communities, as we've said previously. There are a number of recommendations to go with this report. Cabinet okay to approve them?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks for that, Tim. Can we move on now to item 12, which is the medium-term financial? I think it's Dave and Ryan. Can you introduce yourselves and then the report? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ryan Keyworth, the Council's Director of Finance and Commercial Services, and with me today is Dave Phillips, the Council's Head of Strategic Finance. This is the annual medium-term financial analysis, and it sets the context and financial envelope for the council over the next few years, and is part of the process that we follow to ensure that the council sets a legal budget as it's required to do each year in March. You'll be unsurprised to hear that coronavirus and the pandemic bring significant uncertainty to this process this year. The forecasts that we've made previously have been significantly revised because of coronavirus, and the full impact of the crisis is really not yet known. And also unknown remains the full extent of government support that we'll receive both for this year and into the future. The council is well placed to move into this period. And as the report says, careful financial management over the last 10 years means that the council does have some reserves and corporate budgets that it can make available to support the council's finances over the next few years and to give us some flexibility. There's some details of that in the body of the report. But a combination of COVID and the impact of that and business as usual cost and demand pressures means that we have a cumulative budget gap over the next 4 years of about £72 million, which is significant and is going to take some resolution. That same combination of COVID and business as usual pressures means that a significant part of that budget gap, £39 million, impacts us in 2021-22. Many of those pressures come from social care, both the costs of dealing with COVID in that setting and also the normal sort of cost and demand pressures that we see year on year in social care, both for adults and children. It's fairly safe to say that the gap cannot be met from the council's one-off reserves alone, and as a result, significant savings are going to be required or additional income to balance the council's books over the next few years. Just to reiterate, government funding for the future is uncertain at this stage. We were expecting a multi-year settlement from government. We learned today that that's going to be a single-year settlement now. The comprehensive spending review is a one-year process. And also some fairly significant reforms and changes to local government funding, which have been in the offing for a few years now, have been delayed further, we believe. So we've made a baseline assumption here that we're not going to receive any additional government funding to that which we've received this year. It's what we believe a sensible approach on which to plan, but obviously any announcements that government do make from now going forward could alter the position materially. Chair, that's all I was intending to say.
Thanks ever so much. Is there any questions for Ryan or Dave? If not, any comments? Councillor Iqbal?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Ryan and Dave. It was just picking up that latter point that Ryan made, Chair. We know it's the pandemic, the cost. We've been lobbying government from day one, and we continue, as we heard the leader, and we've heard other leaders make statements as well. So we're not alone in seeing this significant increase in our budget due to COVID. All towns and cities are in a similar predicament. I just wanted to balance the argument, Chair. It's like the Prime Minister has said he's making this £1 billion, and that's back down to the lobbying both us as politicians, our MPs have done, and obviously other leaders up and down this country. So we'll continue to lobby government, because they did say at the beginning of the pandemic, we will put our arm around you and whatever it takes. And we've done that, not just to, as I said earlier, to support our businesses, but most vitally, the most vulnerable people in our communities, and supporting the voluntary and community faith sector that have stepped up, working alongside the council on, if I can call it, the social recovery that's taking place. So yes, the medium-term financial strategy, yes, there's a huge challenge there, but also the responsibility does fall with this government to honour the commitments that they made. So yes, we've got a huge challenge facing us, but we'll continue to lobby government to give us the money that is rightly owed, not just to the council, but to the citizens of this city. So thank you, Chair.
Cheers, Miles. Any more questions or comments? Councillor Drayton?
Sorry, thank you. Thanks. Sorry, I was just checking up. Thanks very much for that, Ryan. I just wanted to check. We've had money from government for COVID related stuff, haven't we? You've gone, there you are. I wondered if you could just remind me how much we've had and how much we have spent so far, if you, whatever, but also just, was the money that we got over a certain period or for the whole year to come, despite, you know, whatever, or was it time limited to the first bit of it? Because now we're going into further, and it looks as though, from what the Director of Public Health in his report always said, it looks as though it's going on to maybe over the next months, you know, he's talking about months. Just to remind us, I know, because I know the government have given us some, but how much we've actually spent on that, what were your figures to that? And it was just to understand, you talked about in our, this is, I know it's our accumulative gap, but it was just to understand that, and whether you think we'll get some more for COVID, actual specifically for COVID, other than the deal that we've just had, if that makes sense. Sorry, or we haven't got yet.
Okay, so just the first part of that was around the grant we've received from government in respect of COVID this year, and how much we've spent against that. We've received about £44 million this year in grant. The Prime Minister announced very recently an additional £1 billion for government, for local government, from central government. We do not yet know what our share of that will be. So that's not included in the 44 million. It entirely depends on the distribution method the government choose to apply, and I'm not aware that that's been published yet. In this year's position, we're overspending by around £18 million at the last report. I'm expecting that to improve slightly at month 6, and that position will come to Cabinet soon, but it won't improve much. So we're overspending by around £16 million, £17 million, something like that. That's after we've received the £44 million from government. And that overspend comes to a certain extent from a business as usual overspend. So the normal sort of growth, cost and demand pressures that we see in our services that we've been unable to mitigate. But the vast majority is connected to COVID. So in other words, we've spent more than the grant we've received so far.
Sorry, and the grant was for a year, was it? And I know it was
the one-off grant, yeah.
Yeah.
It was one-off funding.
But some of the grant was also given for specific things, wasn't it? So when people were in shielding, it was given to help and support people who are shielding. So, but we've seen, because of COVID, because of what's happened in COVID, we've seen, say, an expansion in the need to support maybe children who are coming into care that might not have done. So there's that bit that hasn't been actually funded in a way, because it's almost like something that's happened because of COVID. But the 44 million also had, it was given to us to do specific things, but not the impact of the impact on our day-to-day services. That's what I mean, which we haven't got enough of, not enough money to, and that didn't include that. Sorry.
So the 44 million was largely general grant. We've also received some very specific funding at much lower levels for some of the things you referred to. What's not explicitly funded, although it could be argued it's implicitly funded, are the sort of things that you've referred to. In other words, the consequences of COVID on our services, such as some of the services that you have within your portfolio in terms of children's social care and so on. And if you forgive me, can I ask you to ask the second part of your question again? Because
I think I've probably forgotten it as well. No, I suppose I was thinking this, it was a yearly grant. If it was a yearly grant, whether if it goes into further next year, we'll get more. and if they've actually said it. And I suppose for me, it isn't, although it's my portfolio, children's, but we know we've spent an awful lot, and I'm sure Councillor Linda Hammond would also say that we've spent more in adult social care, specifically because we've sent some of our workers in to help and support care homes, and we've done all sorts of things. We've had to pick up a lot of things that has been the implications of it, really. And it would be good, not now necessarily, thank you, but to get a full picture of all that as we're going through, to understand, because it's a lot of money when people see this and said, you know, well, we're getting this a cumulative budget gap of 71 million, you know, it's a lot of money, isn't it? And it's just to try and help people who, if people are listening or watching, to understand exactly what it means, what the impact that COVID has had. Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jackie. I've just been informed that there's a number of members who are having issues with Wi-Fi connections and losing sound, etc. So if people are continually in and out, I think it's because of the bandwidth and some of the issues that they're having with Wi-Fi. So just to make people aware of that. But thanks for that, Jackie. Is there any more questions, comments? If not, there is some recommendations that go with this report. Can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. On to the next item, item 13, procurement of the kitchen worktops, etc. This is presenting officer Mark. Can you introduce yourself and the item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Freeth. I'm Head of Repairs and Maintenance. The item is we're wanting permission to procure a contract for fitted kitchens, worktops and ancillary goods for the repair and maintenance of kitchens in council housing. We're looking to procure a contract with the incumbent supplier JTC, that's Joinery Timber Creations. We're looking to do that through a compliant framework for a period of 4 years. The annual value currently is in the region of £400,000 a year. So obviously over the 4 years, that would mean expenditure in the region of 1.6 million. So by law, procurement regulations, we are required to re-tender this. We have been working on a waiver since March 2020, likely to cover us obviously with the problems we've been incurring because of COVID. JTC have been used by the council since 2003. They came onto the scene as part of the Decent Homes programme, and the council have been using them since. They have continued to manufacture a range of kitchens, worktops that we have continued to use in the council houses, and that's allowed us to maintain the stock in terms of repairs, also use them in voids and acquisitions. We are limited in terms of what we can do, given the vast majority of council houses have these kitchens installed. However, we believe if we approach a number of frameworks, we can aim to try and maintain value for money and stipulate that we get some guarantees for the continued supply of the range we're using, stock levels, and also make sure that we're getting good delivery times. We're also looking at including social value in terms of apprenticeships, with the manufacturer, and colleagues in procurement have equated this over 4 years to in the region of £55,000. So I think that's generally an overview of what we're aiming to do. Like I say, we're seeking permission to go ahead with that procurement. Colleagues believe that if we get the authority to do that, we could be hopefully up and running and compliant by early December this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mark. Is there any questions or comments, colleagues? If not, we've got the recommendations in front of us. Can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark, for that.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Next item is item 14, the transport framework for taxi and minibus provision. Mick, you're presenting this. Can you introduce yourself and the item, please?
You're on mute, Mick.
I think you're on mute, Mick.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks, Chair. My name is Mick Barlow. I'm Head of Service for Transport Services. This is a contract extension for the supply of taxis and minibuses for the SCCUs, which is mainly for home to school SEN children, looked after children and vulnerable adults. This taxi provision backs up our in-house SEN fleet. We transport approximately 1,300 children per day to school. That's on 160 internal minibus routes, and we've got externally, we've got 250 taxi routes, plus a further 70 taxis for looked after children and vulnerable adults. Safeguarding is built into this contract, and the annual spend against the contract is around £2.5 million a year. This framework is a dynamic purchasing system, a DPS, that was procured following an overdue open tender in July 16 for a period of 2 years and 2 one-year extensions that ran us to 31st of July this year. And there are currently 20 contractors on the framework. And it's a brief overview of where we are.
Thanks, Mick. Is there any questions or comments on this? If not, colleagues, there's recommendations with this report. Can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, Mick.
Thank you. Bye.
Speak to you soon. Bye. Item 15, obviously, we took earlier with the with leader. Can we go to item 16, Regional Adoption Agency? Is that you, Paul, that's presenting? Can you introduce yourself and the report, please?
He just seems to have disappeared off the. Oh, he's back again. He's back.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
It's okay, Jackie. Paul, are you there?
Yeah.
I know that some members are having issues with their Wi-Fi. Paul Dempsey, are you there? Seem to be having connection issues. John, are you able to?
Oh, is he? Is he a Chair? Yeah. Oh, right. Is that? Where is he gone? Is that?
Hello.
Thanks, Paul. Can you introduce yourself and the report, please?
Hi, yeah, my name's Paul Dempsey. I'm the Assistant Director for Provider Services, and I just got chucked out of the Zoom at the key point, so apologies for that. I'm here to, well, you've had a report, so the report sets out proposals to establish a South Yorkshire Regional Adoption Agency. It's a partnership arrangement with the adoption services of Barnsley, Rotherham and Doncaster councils in partnership with Doncaster Children's Services Trust. There are 2 recommendations that you can see in the report. One is to asking Cabinet to approve the proposals, and the second recommendation is about asking Cabinet to delegate authority to the Executive Director of People's Services in consultation with the Director of Legal Services to enter into formal arrangements. So the proposals to establish are in line with the government agenda and government legislation as set out in the report. This has been a drive from the government to regionalise adoption services across the country since 2015. The rationale for the government kind of desire to do that is to provide more adoptive families for children in a more timely fashion. And the rationale is that by forming larger regional agencies, that will reduce competition, increase collaboration, and improve and increase the pool of adopters with which we can match our children that need adoptive placements. So whilst it's a legislative requirement, quite on top of that, in Sheffield, we do think that it will be of benefit to children and families in Sheffield and the wider region. We've been working with our colleagues for some years now on it, but very intensely for the last 6 months. Legally, the arrangement will be a partnership. There are different legal structures we could have entered into to work together, but it will be a partnership secured under a partnership agreement. The regional agency will be hosted by Doncaster Children's Services Trust. There will be a budget that is made up of all the 4 services adoption budgets, which will be pooled to create a pooled budget. One of the key principles that for us and the other councils is that it would be cost neutral or better. So entering the RA, it will be cost neutral with pooling our budgets. Another key principle in relation to our staffing is that we didn't want in Sheffield, and neither did the other councils, for our staff to be subject to any TUPE transfer arrangements. So under the rather looser partnership arrangement, our staff will continue to be employed by Sheffield City Council under the same terms and conditions. There are no planned redundancies, so all our staff will, while still employed by Sheffield City Council, they will work under essentially a head of service of the regional agency who will be employed. This is an additional post as set out in the report. This person will be employed by the host Doncaster Children's Services Trust. There are 2 other posts highlighted in the report that will be part of a central hub employed by Doncaster Children's Services Trust. That's a business support officer and a performance analyst. So those, I think, are the key kind of principles of the model. There's on the back page is our rationale for recommending this. We think being part of a regional agency will improve our ability to place Sheffield's children in adoptive families in a more timely manner. This will be good for children. Will also result in efficiencies for the council. Costs a lot of money to keep children in care. So if we can do the best for children and achieve efficiencies, that's what we want to pursue. It will cost us no more financially to enter into a regional adoption agency, and over time we believe it will lead to efficiencies. You will note I've referred to I think in the report an interagency budget. We do buy adoptive placements of other organisations, charities, voluntary adoption agencies, and that is at significant cost sometimes. So the more adopters we approve as a regional agency for our use, the better and best use of council finances. Joining a regional agency in the model that we propose is in line with staff preferences. So in our consultation over the period leading up to now, none of our staff have wished to be subject to TUPE transfer arrangements. And as I've said, joining a RA is in line with the government legislation. The legislation says we have to be in a regional adoption agency by 2020. We aim for our one to be established on the 1st of January 2021. The DfE are well aware of our timetable and our plan, and they've provided us with a coach who works as part of the implementation board and the project team. The head of service will be reporting after January the 1st into the implementation board that's currently chaired by the Doncaster Children's Services Trust Executive Director. I'm a member of that board. That board has representation from Sheffield, and we will proceed. I will proceed to report back in the normal way to Carly Speechley and John McElraith and corporate parenting and Councillor Drayton in the ways that I do now about the performance of our adoption service. So there will be still a strong grip and governance arrangements from Sheffield City Council.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that report. Any questions or comments to Paul? Councillor Drayton?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. It's just a comment, it's been a long time coming, and we have, been very clear, whatever we do, what we're doing is to make a better service for the children and young people who come into our care. And I want to thank the officers that have been involved, Paul, but especially John McElraith, that has worked hard to make sure we get the deal that's the best for our children and the best for our city. It's great to be working in partnership with Doncaster, Rotherham and Barnsley. And it's great that then the children who do unfortunately have to come into care, the children and young people, hopefully they'll have, as Paul has said, a bigger pool of people to find, you know, to get to be adopted. I just also want to say, just as a plug, if I may, Chair, for anybody that's watching, we always need people to come forward who might want to consider adopting our children or young people. They are wonderful. If you could think you could provide a forever family for someone, you know, please do think about it. We have got officers that will support you. We do give support post-adoption and, sorry, pre-adoption and post-adoption. And, you know, I just think it's very rewarding, but I really do hope always need more adoptive parents and more adoptive families. So I recommend the board to, I recommend the Cabinet to support this, and look forward to hearing how far and whether it will be fruitful in spreading that adoptive pool for the children in our care. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jackie, and echo them comments totally. Councillor Jones, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, thanks for the presentation. We're all working in a really difficult environment at the moment with the COVID crisis that's gripping us all. How is this affecting the adoption services and the agency going forward, and how do you feel that this is impacting on families and children across our region?
Yeah, okay. Like all of us in different services, we've tried to adapt rather than completely stop what we're doing. So we are continuing to move children on to permanence in adoptive families, but we're doing it with additional caution. So we do very robust risk assessments when we're moving a child, for example, from a foster placement into a new family with an adoptive parent. We make sure that those households are positive free and no one's self-isolating due to any kind of risk that they've been in contact with someone with COVID. We are continuing to recruit adopters, because life it's not standing still for children, and it's not standing still for people that wish to become adopters. So, but we're doing, we have been doing, particularly when we were in the more robust lockdown, we were doing a lot of that work virtually, like we are now in this Cabinet meeting. So we would be doing assessment sessions with adopters over Zoom and doing things that way. We did do some home visits after we'd done, again, robust risk assessments. We didn't feel that we could do a full assessment without actually obviously seeing people's homes, making sure they were safe, meeting people properly face to face. But many of the visits were done over Zoom to, control that kind of risk element. So we certainly have been placing children for adoption. We don't want delay for children or for adults who want to be, to start a family. So it's been tougher and it's been more difficult. The government did change some of the legislation to make it a bit easier for us. So adoption panels, for example, they changed some of the legislation around that, and we were able to have adoption panels over Zoom. And there were different allowances around medicals for adopters, because seeing GPs is obviously difficult when there's a medical crisis. So we've been getting on with it and doing okay, and obviously we will get to see what's going to happen over the next 6 months.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. If there isn't any more questions or comments, there's a recommendations with this report. Can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Thank you very much. And that closes business for today. Can I thank you all for attending? Can I thank everybody out there watching, and also to take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Cheers.
Bye.